What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a super fun video for you guys because I'm going to be teaching you guys yet another hack for your DJI Fpv goggles where we can finally display the full Betaflight OSD on our goggles. Before this, we could only unlock a few options, but finally we can unlock all of the options we need, such as seeing your GPS coordinates, an arrow pointing home, your speed, your distance to home point, all of that good stuff. So stay tuned for this video. It's gonna be a really great one. So I think one of the biggest learning curves coming from regular DJI type drones to FPV was the fact that I lost all of my GPS and my return to home functions. And that was pretty scary as a beginner FPV pilot because when I lost connection, it would basically just drop out of the sky. I would have no backup solution and it was really stressful starting out. But in these past few weeks, I've been studying a lot about how to set up these little GPSs, and I'm proud to say that I finally found out how to set that up, and I was able to get the GPS coordinates, and I was able to get my GPS rescue mode to work actually. So, all right, sweet. So firstly, before we set up all the GPS stuff and Betaflight and all that complicated stuff, first I want to show you guys how we can hack these goggles to enable us to get the full Betaflight OSD on our goggles. And this is really important because we need to do the hack in order to display the latitude and longitude on our goggles, the arrow pointing home, the distance to our home point, and also our speed. So these are all really important features that we have to unlock before we can get the GPS started up and so we can see in the goggles. So let's get into it. All right, sweet. So before we get started with our DJI Fpv Goggles hack, we need to make sure that we're on the correct firmware. So what you want to do is power on your goggles and launch DJI Assistant 2 for the FPV series and go ahead and plug in your goggles via USB-C. Go ahead and click your goggles. And sweet, as you can see here for the version, you want to check for v01.00.0606. And it's really important that you're on the correct firmware because if you are not, this hack is not going to work. So once you are on the correct firmware, that is awesome, and you can go ahead and close out your assistant, and that's really important to do the hack. All right, sweet guys. So once we ensure that we're on the correct firmware to do the hack, what you want to do is go to fpv.wtf, and this website is super easy to do the hack. We don't have to download any third-party software whatsoever. All you need to do is go over here to the root tab and make sure that your goggles are plugged in via USB-C. And as you can see, my thing is already rooted because I did this last week, but you should see your goggles show up, press connect to them, and then literally all you have to do is just press root device. And this is gonna take about a few minutes and it's super easy. And next, after we root the goggles, next what you wanna do is go ahead and go to this tab and go to the tab called WTFOS. And this is basically the software that allows us to see the full Betaflight OSD. The root unlocks the door, and the software is basically like us putting something inside the room now. So this is also super easy. It's the same exact process. Make sure you plug it in and you should see your goggles show up, and then go ahead and press install over here. And again, this takes about a few minutes. Not a big deal at all. And finally, next what you have to do is go ahead and go over here and go to the package manager. And what you want to do is go over here and scroll down to the tab that says MSP-OSD. And it says MSP OSD service for the DJI HD Fpv goggles. Perfect, that's for us. And all you have to do is just go ahead and press install. And as you can see here, mine says removed because I already installed mine last week. But yeah, super easy. Just takes a few minutes, and you can go ahead and check out the other options they have here. I haven't gotten a chance to try the other ones, but I might try that out later. There is another one where you can draw on the DJI goggle LED display. There's another one where you can enable the audio output on the goggles, and that only works for the full-size DJI Air unit, so you can basically hear the propellers no matter how far you are from your home point. And yeah, there's a few different cool things, but yeah, for this hack, all you need to do is just install that MSP-OSD, and honestly, after that is done, you're basically good to go, and you can literally just unplug your goggles like so. Sweet, and as far as the goggles, that's all you have to do on this end. All right, sweet. So after we performed our hack on the DJI Fpv goggles, we can go ahead and set these aside. And now we can do the same exact process on the DJI Fpv Air unit itself. So for this process, what you want to do is firstly get a fan to make sure that you're actively cooling the air unit. because we're gonna have to plug in a battery to the drone for this process to work. And next, what you want to do is, again, ensure that you're on the correct firmware by going to DJI Assistant 2 and checking to make sure you're on 01000606. And then next, you want to go back to that same website, fpv.wtf, to perform the same process. So what you want to go ahead and do is plug it in via USB-C. Go ahead to the root area. And as you can see, again, my device is already rooted because I did this last week. But go ahead, for you guys, go ahead and select your air unit and then press root device. And after that, again, go over here to WTF OS and go ahead and press install. And lastly, go ahead and go to the package manager and look for that same package labeled MSP-OSD and go ahead and press install on that as well. As you can see here, I already have that installed. And yeah, after that's all good to go, you can go ahead and just unplug it. And now we're gonna get ready to configure our OSD and also our GPS rescue modes in Betaflight. So I'll see you guys in Betaflight. All right, sweet. So far we performed the root and installation of WTF OS both on our goggles and also our DJI Air unit. So once those are both completed, what you want to do is next move on to Betaflight, because here we're going to do a few more options and a few more commands before we can finally get the full OSD to work. So bear with me, guys. This last part is the most important part, but it's also very easy, so just pay attention. So what you want to do is, again, make sure your props are off before plugging into Betaflight, and you're going to go ahead and turn on the quad. And this time, make sure you plug in the USB-C to your flight controller, not the air unit. So go ahead and plug it in. Awesome. So our flight controller is connected in Betaflight. And what you want to go ahead and do is go to the ports tab. And here is extremely important because we want to look for the UART where our video transmitter is located. And by default on these Bind Fi quads, usually they're on UART 3, but go ahead and check. And as you can see here, we have MSP selected for UART 3. And for UART 1, that's serial RX. That's our S-bus for the DJI remote controller link. And later on, I'm gonna talk about this one. This is UART 5, where our GPS is located. I'm gonna show you guys how to set that up later. But first, let's make sure we got the OSD working correctly. All right, sweet. So once you located which port and UART your VTX video transmitter is on, you want to go ahead and go to the CLI tab and type in these commands. First, type in set OSD underscore DisplayPort underscore device equals MSP. And then next, set DisplayPort underscore MSP underscore serial equals, and then set it to 1 below the UART where your VTX transmitter is located on. So for our example, our VTX is on UART 3. So for this over here, you want to select 2. And then just go ahead and press enter after that. And after that, you're basically good. Next, I'm going to show you guys how to get the GPS working so we can have all those juicy details and all that juicy information being displayed on the goggles. Because if the GPS is not working, none of the latitude, longitude, the speed, the home point, none of that's going to work in your goggles if the GPS is not set up properly. So in order to do that, again, we're going to plug in our quad, plug in the flight controller, open up Betaflight, and again, we're going to go to this ports tab. And that's really important because here is where you set up all the UARTs, the sensor inputs like the GPS. This is a really important tab to understand. So what you want to do, and what's really important, is you want to identify the correct UART that your GPS is connected to. So for me, that actually took a long time to figure out. I had to look at a lot of diagrams, and honestly, what ended up helping me was going onto Diatone, the website, and finding my exact flight controller, because from there, I was able to find the exact diagrams and kind of understanding my flight controller on where the UARTs are located, and that's really important. So if you don't know which UART your GPS is connected to, make sure you find those diagrams and also open up your quad to see exactly which UART, because it is kind of confusing if you are a beginner. So I was finally able to confirm and find out that my GPS is connected to UART 5. So I go ahead to this UART tab over here, and for sensor input, you go ahead and select GPS. By default, it's on disabled, so go ahead and select GPS, and you want to set this to auto. I had mine set to auto, and it's pretty cool because after I press save and reboot, it identified the correct baud rate, which is 57600. So that's really important, and that's all you have to do on this tab. So make sure, again, that you have the correct UART, just select GPS, and then select auto for the baud rate, and then just go ahead and press save and reboot. And then next, after this, you want to go to the configuration tab. And this tab is a little bit tricky. It took me a few tries actually, but what you want to do is go to this section called the GPS and obviously turn it on. And then it's interesting because the correct one for me is U-blocks, but this confused me when I was trying to get it started because I looked up the GPS on Diatone Roma, on the website, on Diatone website, and I saw something where it says that my GPS was actually an NMEA protocol. So the whole time I was trying to select that and I was wondering why it didn't work, but finally I just went ahead and selected U-blocks because a lot of videos said to set it like that. And I was like, sure. And then soon enough, once I did that, my GPS was working. So that's really important to select. And if it's not working, just try different ones, honestly, and just keep hitting save and reboot. And I have auto baud off because it was able to identify the correct one, which was 57600 in the ports tab. I'm talking about this right here. And then, yeah, I have auto configuration on and use Galileo. That's like another GPS thing. And here is interesting, you can select set home point once. I actually might do that. So that means it's only going to set the home point once. So just in case you do disarm by doing like a perch or something, it's not going to reset your home point. So I'm going to go ahead and press save and reboot actually. So one way to check to see if your GPS is working is to go ahead and look up here to see and make sure that your GPS icon is working. So another really cool way to check to see if your GPS is working on Betaflight is go ahead and just type in GPS pass-through, all one word, into the CLI. And if it's working, you should be seeing all this weird hieroglyphics. I know it looks crazy, but once you see this, you know your GPS is working. So that's really awesome. And another way you can check is later when you go out into the field is power up your drone, power up your goggles, and you should actually see the latitude and longitude updating constantly as your drone moves around. And you can literally just type in those coordinates into your Google Maps and it should work. All right, awesome guys. So we're almost done. We're finally almost done Betaflight. There's only a few more things we have to do to get the fail-safe mode working, but it's gonna be super easy. So all you have to do is go ahead and go to Betaflight, press enable expert mode, go to the tab called fail-safe, and what you wanna do is you really wanna look at these settings. So for me, what you wanna do is select your stage 2 fail-safe as GPS rescue. And quickly to explain what these different stages are, as you can see here, there's a thing called stage 1, stage 2, and basically stage 1 is just like those first few milliseconds when you lose connection, and you can choose whether you want your GPS rescue mode to engage as soon as something like that happens, or you can also select over here called the guard time, where it's basically gonna say like, okay, we just fail-safed, but let's wait a few seconds, a few milliseconds before we actually engage stage 2, which is the GPS rescue mode. So for me, I have this set to, it's only about like 1 second. So basically if I lose connection, if I have a fail-safe, it's gonna wait like 1 second and then it's gonna engage GPS rescue mode. And you can also literally just set it to stage 2. So that means as soon as it even loses connection for even a tenth of a millisecond, it's gonna go straight to GPS rescue mode. But I saw a few people just set it up like this and this works fine for me. And yeah, you wanna make sure that you have it to GPS rescue mode. And here you can select the different angles, like the angle at which it's gonna return home, the initial altitude, which means what elevation it's gonna go to before it tries to fly home, the descent distance, and yeah, this is all, you can all leave these pretty much as the default. And here you can select the minimum satellites. Here you can select allow arming without fix. And I have my sanity checks off. So I mean, this is all fine, that works great. But one thing to note is over here, which is the channel fallback settings. And these are interesting because basically this means what happens to the different channels on your remote, basically your little switches. What happens to these switches when you have a failsafe. So by default, it's on hold, so that means it'll just go back to where it was. But I have my GPS rescue switch and I have this at set. So basically what this means is as soon as I have even the smallest failsafe, it's gonna change my aux4, which is my GPS rescue mode switch. It's gonna set that to 1800. So basically that means it's just gonna engage the GPS rescue mode switch by default as soon as there's a failsafe. So as you guys can see here, I went ahead and went to the modes tab, and actually I went ahead and mapped one of my auxiliary switches to GPS rescue mode. And this is really important because this is how you test the GPS rescue mode to see if it's working in the field. And also this is really important because in case your GPS rescue mode is working and your drone is flying back to you, there is a possibility to unengage the GPS rescue mode, because when the drone is in a good connection and you do take over control, it automatically disengages GPS rescue mode. So it's actually important to have a switch, because in case the drone is coming back to you and you accidentally disengage it by controlling it, you can actually go ahead and select GPS rescue mode again and it'll come back to you again. So I think that's really important to have here as a switch. So as you can see here, once we go back to the failsafe tab, I have my auxiliary 4 GPS rescue mode switch to set and to 1800. So as you can see, as soon as that failsafe occurs, it's basically gonna force this switch to go into GPS rescue mode, which is awesome because as we know, when we lose video, we panic as a pilot and sometimes we don't know what to do. So by having it to force into GPS rescue mode, that's gonna be awesome. So we basically don't have to think about anything when we lose connection. It's just gonna start heading home. All right, sweet guys. So I know that got a little bit technical, but if you guys just take the time to do these few steps to set up the OSD in your goggles, to set up your GPS working correctly, and to set up all these different modes like GPS rescue mode, I think it's gonna make flying a lot more stress-free, a lot more chill, because as drone pilots, there's so many different factors that can stress us out on set or when we're just flying around. So by having these different backups, like having GPS rescue mode to kick in if we go in too far and lose connection, I think that's really worth it. And if you guys are watching this video, it's because you guys do take FPV seriously and you guys want to become a better pilot. And honestly, by doing all this stuff, by learning how to set up my GPS, how to get the full Betaflight OSD, and now I have all my coordinates in the goggles, it just made me feel like I really leveled up as a pilot. Like I feel like I know so much more about FPV now, and I just feel way more confident in the air now just by getting these few different features to work. So, and this is part of the reason why I love FPV, because it's just so customizable. There's just so many cool different things you can do to customize the flying experience to you as a pilot. And I'm really excited to where this is gonna take me, because now that I have GPS working on my little diatone Roma, this has inspired me to get into cinelifting, because now when I have a cinelifter, I'm gonna set up the GPS and I'm gonna feel way more confident in the air, knowing that when I'm flying my red Komodo or an expensive camera, knowing that if I lose connection, that thing's gonna go up and then head towards home. That's super, super awesome. So I'm really excited, and that's why I made this video, because I wanna show you guys how easy it is to set this up, because there's so many kind of complicated videos on YouTube, kind of weird and kind of confusing, but I just spent the past few weeks kind of learning this on my own. So I really hope you guys find this video useful. So sweet, let's go out into the field and make sure that everything worked. Let's get it. What's up guys? So right now we're at the park, and here we're gonna test out to make sure that our full Betaflight OSD is available on the goggles. And we're also gonna make sure our GPS is working. We can see our GPS coordinates, our home point, all that good stuff. And then also here, we're gonna test to make sure our GPS rescue mode is working and making sure that it returns to home when we press that GPS rescue switch. So this is a great place to do these kind of tests because it's just so wide open here and there's barely anybody here. So I'm really excited for this. So let's get it. All right guys, so for this first flight, we're gonna test to make sure that all of the OSD is working, making sure that our latitude and longitude is correct, our satellites are showing, our distance to home, our speed, our altitude, all that good stuff. We wanna make sure that's all working in the goggles. So I'm gonna start off by doing this first flight via line of sight, and then I'm gonna have the GoPro recording in the goggles on the side right now, because unfortunately with the hack, we're not able to record the OSD and the DVR recording. It's just the regular recording. So yeah, let's get it. Put it in stabilize mode. And one thing to note for later is before you do any of these GPS rescue tests, you want to make sure that you're at least 100 meters away from the home point in order for it to work, because if not, your quad is probably just going to drop out of the air when you enable GPS rescue. So yeah, make sure you're 100 meters away from the starting home point. All right, so as you guys can see right now, you should be able to see the latitude and longitude in the upper parts of the screen. And then also that little white arrow should be kind of pointing behind us right now to where our home point was. And you should also be looking at the satellites, how many satellites we have. And it should be showing the speed right now and also the distance to home. All that good stuff should be showing right there in the OSD right now. So everything's working. It's good. Sweet. So I'm gonna land it right now, and then I'm gonna put the goggles on, and then we're gonna try out to see if the GPS rescue mode actually works. All right guys, so now I'm gonna do the same test, but this time I'm gonna be wearing the goggles just to make sure that everything's looking good here before I trigger the GPS rescue mode. All right guys, so I'm almost ready to practice and engage my GPS rescue mode to make sure that it's working. And one hack that I learned from someone is that when you're testing the GPS rescue mode, you should actually kind of like go to basically kind of land on the ground without disarming. Or first make sure you're 100 meters away firstly. So I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna engage GPS rescue mode, see? It's now rising up. It's rising up and it's flying towards my home point. That's awesome, okay. I'm gonna disengage it and take over. Awesome, it works, sweet. So that's a great way to test it, because in case something is wrong and your quad just drops out of the air, when you engage GPS rescue, you don't wanna damage your quad and damage it when you're just doing testing. So yeah, do exactly what I did, where you kind of basically just land on the ground without disarming, and then, or you can also just do low hover and then engage it. See how it took kind of a second? That's because I have those, that stage 1, stage 2 guard time on. That's why it kind of went down a little bit, I believe. So yeah, just disengage the GPS rescue and I can now resume my control. That's super awesome, because now I know if I do have a fail-safe, if I lose connection, it's gonna come home. Or also if there's just an emergency, if I'm flying and just anything happens, I can trigger that switch and it'll come home on its own, which is super awesome. All right guys, so that was super awesome. I just did a test of both my OSD and also to make sure that the GPS rescue mode is working. And I'm so happy to say that it's finally working, and that's super awesome. This is actually the first time I tried doing this, but I honestly watched like 3 or 4 videos on this on YouTube. So I feel like I kind of understood it before I came out here to try it. But yeah, just look at my settings, how I did on Betaflight. That's exactly how I had it programmed on here. And yeah, it seems to work great. I was just kind of hovering over there. Again, make sure you're 100 meters away, but then once you trigger that, it's kind of like a DJI Mavic. I just literally just felt it float up and it went towards my home direction. So that's really awesome. And I like it because it's customizable. You can customize the initial altitude. You can customize the angle at which it returns, the descent altitude. So make sure to play around with those settings if you kind of want to customize it. But honestly, I didn't really touch much of those settings and it seems to work great. So that's really awesome. I'm really happy it works. So now for the rest of the day, I'm just gonna throw on this GoPro Hero 11. This came in recently, and just get some sick B-roll here. There's also some really cool tracks over here, so I can do some really awesome train chasing here. So yeah, just have some fun and just do some freestyle or something. Awesome.